When it comes to like protecting these animals, do you think as science progresses and we learn more about consciousness that we're going to look back at this kind of like the Colosseum?
I think
Like
we
we're
already do. I think those who are in the know already do, and that's why we fight so hard. Anyone that's gotten close enough to the industry, be it scientists or trainers, just by virtue of experience and whatnot,
Mhm.
everyone will tell you that this thing needs to stop. That all of this, the entirety of this practice needs to stop. Um, the emotional toll. I mean, I can attest to it personally of separating a baby from its mother, or and especially males when they're torn from their mothers with whales, and in my experience, pinniped cetaceans as a whole, the males just die younger. It's because they're so vulnerable. They're just mama's boys. These
Same
animals
with
in the will
babies. I can
spend
attest to that.
these animals will never leave their mother's lives, their mother's side for the entirety of their lives, save for very brief periods of like foraging or mating and whatnot. But aside from that, these big male orcas will never leave their mother's side beyond the distance of like a body's length. They're mama's boys. When you tear them from them at a young age, you see what happens to them. They're broken. So
Mhm.
no one can, and their level of consciousness is like, it's the thing that bothers you the most as you get closer and closer to them. It's one thing to look at something that's majestic. It's another thing to start to relate to them. And then I've had the benefit of seeing whales in the wild, dolphins in the wild. The animals that I worked with are hardly a version of that. I mean, they're drugged, they're starved, they're reduced to puppets. I mean, it's awful. They're not healthy weights. They're not able to use the things that make them majestic. They can never get up to any of their top speeds. They're not able to. They don't. I mean, vocalizing is difficult for them.
Mhm.
Separating these animals and mixing them, and it's just an awful practice. And I think that we already look back at this as a barbaric practice. It's just we don't collectively yet. And so
Mhm.
there is something called the 100th monkey effect, where collectively as a society, everyone sort of adopts a new level of morality, or that the practice changes, and it changes very quickly. I think I think we've gone past that. I think the paradigm shift has started. We're just everything's been under that boiling point waiting. We're just
Mhm.
waiting for that small little catalyst. I think COVID did it. I don't think people are going to leave the confines of their homes after this period to go to a zoo. I think they're going to go, and the first thing everyone's going to say is, this sucks. I know what that feels like.
Oh,
Whereas before
wow.
we never knew that. People are now, there's all the meme. Look, we live in a meme world, and some of the more powerful memes are, hey, how's your last 4 months been? Sucks. And then they show an animal that's been in captivity for 40 years, pacing its cage or swimming in circles. So I
Oh,
think the
wow.
perspective really changes moving forward. So I think the paradigm shift is amidst us. I think all of this changes very rapidly. And again, the market is decided by people's votes. They decide with their dollars. And SeaWorld is not a place people give a shit to go to, and especially a place like fucking Marineland, which SeaWorld is a day at the spa versus Marineland.
Oh, man. I can't. So that footage was really rough when you were going down that little walkway and you had like these tiny little cells that like the animal could barely move in. And you're like, how long are they in there? Like that isn't
That's their
stimulating at
lives.
all. Like that's, I just don't, there's so much land there too. So I guess, is it possible? Because I'm like very anti captivity. I was doing a little bit of research and it was really infuriating because most of the stuff that was coming up was like pro marine parks, pro zoo, and it was like the benefits of captivity. These animals live longer, healthier lives. And you're like, you know that's not true. You absolutely know that's not true. And it's like I think half for orcas. I don't know what the comparable number is for walruses or seals or dolphins, but we know that's not true. Like they're like you said, they're not using their instincts, right? They're not hunting, they're not going to top
They're all drugged.
speed.
They're all drugged.
They're all
That's all you have to know.
drugged.
They're all drugged.
Oh my gosh. So you're like, you know that's not the case. But you have some people that are just like ignorant to it, right? They just want to go see a really cool animal and they don't think anything of it. Like they're like, oh well, they don't think, they're not human, they're lesser than. And when I was trying to like I guess, compare it to the Colosseum. I was like, well, how long did that go on? Because people thought that was okay, right? Like, let's just go battle each other and kill this elephant and all of these things. And that was about 400 years until there was a shift in like just interest in what was socially acceptable and a couple of other like reasons. And then I Googled and found the first walrus was put in captivity in 1608. And then the first orca was 1961. So I'm like, we are so behind. We are so behind like that shift in consciousness and what's like acceptable. And I'm like, I hope that you're right with COVID creating some kind of connection of the dots and people seeing like, man, this sucks for me. Like, think of how awful for anyone that does have like a healthy lifestyle and you move and you not necessarily work out, but like you're doing something for your body. Think of like when you take time off, like how much like a week impacts like your mental ability, right? Like I get angry, I get like just a lot like quicker to any like emotion, really. I get like sad faster, my body starts hurting. And it's like, what do you think this animal that's supposed to be, diving and hunting, like what does that do to them? We don't want to talk about it because they're just animals.
They're in pools, and if they spy hop, if they lift their heads above the 2-foot wall that surrounds them, they see trees. And the reality is, for the animals that are at Marineland, you are thousands of kilometers or miles from any ocean. So their percentage chance of ever having any semblance of a natural life again is almost net zero. Imagine, like, they're doomed, and they know it. They lift and they don't see an out. There's like every single day they're trying to imagine, because they're so intelligent. Every single day they're trying to crack the formula of trying to get back home. That's it. That's all they're trying to do. Every which way is trying to figure out how to get out. It's like, it's a strange thing, but that's how their minds work, until eventually they suffer from this thing called zookosis, where they go on autopilot. You see it all the time. Currently, there's a whale at Marineland. She's been in captivity, 42 years old. She lives completely alone, or an orca named Kiska. She swims in circles, scratches her backs here, does 2 pumps of her tail here, breathes here, and then rolls slightly to an angle here, and then does that on repeat all day until the trainers come with their buckets. They smash the bucket against the grates, which summons her to come up, and they've got her for about a minute of interest, where they shovel the food and drugs into her and let her go again. You'll see it with animals, bears back and forth in their cage, tigers back and forth in their cage. There was actually a study that just came out. In fact, someone tagged me in a tweet just yesterday of a bear that was released after 25 years of captivity, and in its new sanctuary, it's still walking the exact same path without the cage bars there. It's just, they just go eventually.